Captain America and sort of the whole Marvel, etc. tends to I find it very hard to get interested in these stories until actually recently they started to stop being black and white. It used to be good guy, bad guy, and then they started to become a bit more nuanced, where the bad guy is actually has a good part and the good guy is not always perfect, etc. And they were just getting closer to reality. But inevitably, if anything is allowed, like what's the point of a movie? Like anything's allowed, so I can just push a button. I have this superpower, and why don't I just use it now? And then it's escapism. It's imagine I had all this power. Imagine I had this ability to just have this power to solve all my problems. And that typically, again, no criticism of these movies. They play a role. Recreation, escapism, coming up, and they might even inspire certain ideas, useful things, etc. But just paying attention to you'll be around friends around this age now who can balance. Maybe in, let's say, 5 years, people start working. Some can balance their books and some can't. And you've got a conversation that might go like this. I'm always in trouble with the credit card. I'm overspending, etc. And you go, well, let's look at what's going on. And you say, but you're making 10 and you're spending 12 every month. You're making 100 and spending 150. Like, this will not work. But why? I'm just spending the same way my friends are. And you really feel like there's something missing in, hey, you're not being realistic. You're not, and they want to escape to this world where I could just still do it and somehow magically it will be solved, right? So this is why it's so important at that age, when children are building this understanding of the world, literally cause and effect, that the books and the stories we tell them have to be around that. And so there are so many books around the human body, farm animals, sea animals, the dinosaurs. There's so much rich information that we can give children that is literally true and useful. The child who cries, the child who had a tantrum, the child who got a younger sibling, and there's more than enough content that is helpful and useful and supports their developmental needs rather than confuses it too early. And that's the fantasy thing. On the third thing, on the exercise that you worked with, it's called the binomial cube, and it's a little bit hard to explain without actually having it, but it is this incredible representation of an algebraic formula, which of course we don't talk about. Just like when we talk about length, we don't talk about meters to children. It happens to be a meter. But we do talk about this is very long and this is short and this is in between, etc. But to go just to give the principle, I think that's going to be very helpful around these activities. Science and math have infinite possibilities, where you can build. Using the rules of math and physics and science and chemistry, and you can build chairs and spaceships, right? And one of the problems with schools is that and schools have the right intention. It's not that all these schools we spoke about and universities and the parents, they are trying to do their best, and they think that's the way to do it. And one of the intentions is the same one, is we need to prepare children. We have to give them all this info and they have to memorize it so that they are ready for the world. And what we're saying is there's a better way to make them ready for the world. We're not having a debate about schools where they don't want to prepare children for life. That would be something else. They are genuinely interested in preparing children and students for life. But one of the ways that they're doing it is they're looking at all this knowledge, and the knowledge is growing, and it's growing exponentially. So AI, how will a university be able to adapt to ChatGPT if it just came out a couple of years ago and you've got, dozens of professors across hundreds of subjects, so just imagine the challenge when you're set up that way, which is we've got to get this knowledge in and children have to memorize it. So trying to stuff the infinite possibilities into these 10, 15 years of education is mission impossible. And it's just getting harder and harder as the knowledge base of the planet grows, of humanity grows. And what it ends up being is this chaotic, piecemeal, stuffed info. It's not complete. And we don't have time to explain the whys and how did these things come about. We've barely got enough time just to try and cover some of the material, right? And children are getting it in different, so you're learning one day it's quadratic equations, the next thing it's something else, and you don't really know why, but it's just there's this race to try and stuff it into your head as quickly as possible, and it's memorized, so it's loose, it's not very strong, and so we all know where that goes. Meanwhile, math and physics, although they have unlimited possibilities, they actually have very defined and limited parameters. Somewhere in the order of 10 to 15. You've got length, width, height. Whether it's a table or a spaceship, you've got to use length, width, and height. You've got mass, whether it's a chair, spaceship, swimming pool, whatever. You've got things like friction. You've got temperature. You've got pressure, volume, right? So, and if you count all of those things out, they're limited. Instead of trying to stuff the unlimited possibilities in this chaotic way, which is mission impossible and getting worse every year and serves no purpose other than frustrating students, why not have them learn how to master those 10 to 15 qualities in math and physics, and then maybe give a few examples of how you could combine them, but they then combine them themselves into the infinite possibilities because they've mastered the key. We call them the keys to the universe, right? If you think about it, language is the same. Rather than you can't read a million books, or there's a limited number of books you can read. Maybe one day we'll download them all into our brains, but even the whole experience of how the book is relevant or not, you can't replicate this thing about reading a book over and over again. But so reading is critical, yes, absolutely. But constructing language, there are rules of how you construct. And if you learn how to construct, you can then build and write as much as you want. And then the others become examples. So let's get a bit of an example of this, an example of that. But you've mastered how to write and how to construct. And so this is why the classroom has the length exercise. It has the width exercise, it has the volume exercise, it has the temperature exercise. So we have temperature bottles, thermic bottles they're called, and two sets, one brown set, one white set, or whatever color. And then we'll put, ice cold, cool, room temperature, warm, hot water in these bottles in two. We'll mix them up and then you have to match them, and you're really understanding temperature with your body rather than some sort of abstract concept. And later on, once you've understood it, we can start to talk about there are different ways to measure. How would I express it? Well, I'll express it using Celsius or Fahrenheit or Kelvin or whatever it is, rather than the other way around. Same thing with length. So you're practicing with your fingers, you're tracing something that is, and because it's a decimal system, it's always 10 pieces. They're exactly the same color so that your eyes will only notice the difference in length, nothing else. And that's one of the principles of how these exercises were built to basically help children master things really, really well, and then create the infinite possibilities.